Hello everybody, this is Don McLaren coming to you from Shanghai, China. This is the second video in my series, I guess you could call it. I posted a video about a month ago, and I have to say that actually I did not like that video. A main reason being because I was a film major in junior college, now called community college in the U.S. But I was a film major, and not only that, I was the valedictorian of my class, City College of San Francisco, class of 1988. The chancellor or president, I can't remember his title, called me up one day, and at that time I was working 2 jobs and going to school. It was I actually completed all my coursework, but I had to take another class in order to get into to transfer to UC Berkeley, where I had applied. I was living in San Francisco in the Tenderloin, which is a considered one of the worst neighborhoods, one of the poorest neighborhoods in San Francisco. So being a poor person, starving student, that's where I lived, in a tiny apartment. Anyway, he called me up and asked me if I wanted to read the commencement speech, commencement address, valediction. I said I'd be interested, and he told me to bring something in to him. We made an appointment for a few days later, and he and a few of the other administrators from the school were there. So I read the speech, and they liked it, and they gave me the job. So I was valedictorian, class of 88. But so I looked at that anyway. I'm not trying to, brag or anything. It's just I worked my butt off in school, so I deserved all the accolades I could get. But the point I wanted to make is that I didn't like that video because having been a film major, the lighting was really bad. I got a shaved head, a light shining off my head, and I can see it now in this video too. It's just not aesthetic at all. Also, my delivery in that video I don't think was good. I was speaking, I think, too slow, it was boring. Some of the stuff I was talking about was interesting, but I don't think my delivery was very good. It was as if I was speaking to Chinese English students in high school, which actually I did earlier today, even though it's a Saturday. I teach on Saturdays. Or teaching, immigrants in New York City English, or English students in Japan. I've taught English for over I can't remember how many, over 9 or 10 years. Along with a lot of other jobs I've had, but it just didn't seem very good. So I'm not sure if this is going to be any better. Actually, I had kind of scripted a little speech I was going to make for that video, but I don't know if that helped at all. Anyway, in this video I wanted to talk a little bit about film. I said in the previous video I'd talk about things like film, literature, travel, etc. So I'm going to talk about film a little bit now, completely unscripted. I'll say that the first film that moved me, it just happened at the right time, came at the right time into my life at the right time. It was a film called Blue Collar. It came out in, I believe it was 1978. I was working in a factory at the time in Michigan. And that film was about factory workers in Michigan. Harvey Keitel, Richard Pryor, Yaphet Kotto was one, the trials and tribulations of being a factory worker in a corrupt environment in Michigan was was the main, I think, theme, main thrust of that film. But there's also another aspect, another theme, which was race relations or racism, racial tension, which is still very strong aspect of our culture in not only in Michigan, in the United States, in the world, in China, in Japan. We still have a long way to go before we learn to live with each other in peace and harmony. And in Michigan, in the 70s, we were living in the aftermath of one of the biggest insurrections or riots in United States history, which occurred in Detroit. Detroit basically burned down. A large part of it burned down in summer of 1967. And in Grand Rapids, Michigan also, and in every city of any size in the 67 and 68, there are riots and insurrections throughout the country. A civil war, basically, just like the civil war being fought in Vietnam, where we were sending troops. And later, a few months after I saw the film Blue Collar, I had decided to join the Navy to get the hell out of Michigan, which seemed to be the only viable choice for me, even though I'd been offered a couple of scholarships to schools in Michigan, which I didn't apply for. The reason being that they were in Michigan. I wanted to get out of Michigan since the day I was born. So I joined the Navy, and shortly after I'd signed my contract, in Grand Rapids on Hall Street, where I was living with my parents, my siblings, I turned on the TV one night and saw a film called Taxi Driver. And that film moved me more than any other film that I have seen, I think, in my life. I've seen many films. I think that film still has the most profound effect on me. And what struck me most about that film at first viewing was, I was going through a lot of really difficult stuff. I had an alcoholic, abusive father, had been bullied, dealt with bullying in junior high school, didn't see anything that I wanted in the culture of Grand Rapids, if you can even call it a culture. Had broken up. A girlfriend had broken up with me, and we'd broken up with each other. I was really in a deep state of depression at the time. And when I saw Taxi Driver, I thought, gee, man, whoever made this film understands how I feel. They have written and directed and acted in a story that goes very deeply into a very disturbed, depressing human being. Travis Bickle was the character's name, and I thought it's a very disturbing, depressing film, but yet it's moving, it's inspiring in a way. It's still hard for me to describe. And I later found out that Blue Collar and Taxi Driver had been made by Paul Schrader, who grew up in Grand Rapids, same city I did, same dump I did, and went to college just a few blocks down the street, Calvin College on Franklin Street in Grand Rapids. He and his brother wrote Blue Collar, and Paul Schrader wrote Taxi Driver. Martin Scorsese directed it. Robert De Niro was the main character, the protagonist. And then I went into the Navy, and I read a lot of novels, read a lot of poetry. I developed a love of literature. I'd already started that love affair with literature in Grand Rapids, but in the Navy, it went into second gear. My love of storytelling, and films are a form of storytelling. just as novels are. And I started going to a lot of movies. Usually went by myself. Most of the guys I knew in the Navy, wanted to see Hollywood stuff, Sylvester Stallone stuff, Steven Spielberg stuff. Not to denigrate Steven Spielberg. He's a fine filmmaker, but I think basically for the most part tries to pander to a wide audience, whereas people like Martin Scorsese, Jim Jarmusch, David Lynch, they know that there's an audience for their work, though it might be small. They're very loyal and very important audience, and they make films for that audience. Martin Scorsese has a knack for reaching a wide audience with the films he makes, disturbing and as they are. So anyway, I thought, man, it'd be cool to make films. I was just fascinated with the storytelling, through the cinematic storytelling, and eventually I majored in film. I was very, very unconfident. I didn't know, could I be an artist? I didn't know. Maybe I didn't have what it takes. Maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe I wasn't sensitive enough. But as it turned out, I guess I was, because I did well in school at City College of San Francisco. And there's a lot more I could say about film. I've seen many, many, many films. So I graduated from City College, and I applied to different schools, one of them being New York University's film school, which accepted me. And I loved New York. I'd been to New York a few times, hitchhiked there once from San Francisco. This was 1980s New York, which is very different from 2010's New York. It was still funky town. Another world. A dark, wonderful, fascinating world that I wanted to live in. But I was in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, which was also pretty cool, still is. And UC Berkeley is a lot cheaper than NYU. And I was more into the writing aspect of filmmaking than into the technical aspect of, photography, directing, that kind of stuff. I was more into the writing and editing. Actually, I really liked editing. The editing classes I took, I did well in. But I chose to go to Berkeley instead of film school at NYU. Majored in English at Berkeley. And after Berkeley, I went to Japan. And I didn't know it at the time, but I believe inside me there was something that drew me to Japan. I'd visited Japan once in the Navy. Went off alone, took a train from Sasebo, Kyushu, all the way to Tokyo by myself. I was fascinated with Japan, and I had always wanted to go back. I thought it was just a really cool place, and Japan's economy was getting stronger and stronger and stronger as years went by, and many Americans thought that the Japanese economy might even overtake the American economy, and it was a threat. And Japan was practicing adversarial trade, especially in the automobile industry in my home state of Michigan. Americans thought. But anyway, it seemed to me that Americans didn't do a damn thing about trying to learn about Japan. Didn't study the history, the language, just whined and complained. It seemed to me at the time, before I went to Japan. I moved to Japan in 1991, and found that I wasn't completely right about the whining, complaining Americans. The Japanese actually were practicing adversarial trade. It was a two-way street. I really had no sympathy for Americans that whined and complained but didn't do a damn thing to learn about the Japanese market. And I didn't have much, have any sympathy for Japanese that were selling products in the American market just to get a market share, selling them at or below cost in order to gain that market share and destroy the manufacturers, American manufacturers of products, whether they be computers, cars, or whatever, in order to get the largest share of the American market, which was the biggest market at the time, and I think still is the biggest market in the world for products. But anyway, I know I'm getting very off the subject of film. But moving back to that subject a little bit, film is storytelling, visual storytelling. I was looking for a story. I had been working on a novel. It was about a guy in the Navy, basically written about me in the third person. I had moved to Japan, and I was deep in debt, and I found within a year or 2 or 3 in Japan that the stories I was experiencing in Japan were much more interesting, much more dramatic than anything I could have come up with in fiction. If I'd gone to NYU, I may have come across some very interesting stories in New York City, going to a very expensive film school. But something was pulling me towards Japan stronger than pulling me towards New York City. The West, which actually, go far enough west and you're east in Japan, was a stronger pull for me than the east of New York City. So I went to Japan and lived a lot of interesting, difficult stories, and am in the process of writing about them. And I have already published a few of them, and you can find them on my website, donmclaren.com. And the website is below in the comments section. So this has been an off-the-cuff, non-scripted video. Hope you are all doing well on this Saturday evening. It's 10:13 p.m. here in China on March 29th, 2014. I will be back. Please take care. Au revoir. Bye-bye.